Okay, here we are. Hi, how are you? We're back for yet another video. Um, and I'll get a good workout, hopefully. Um, so anyway, uh, today's video is on the problem of induction. Now, I'm deeply concerned about my ability to do this video without dropping in some kind of without editing it and putting in some kind of slides. So I'm going to try, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll just upload an edited version later. Live and learn, right? Hope you're all doing well. Anyway, so you really need to do the readings for this one. You're not going to get it just from my lecture. But here's the lecture anyway. Hume brings up, in the reading you've got, he brings up the problem of induction, as it's called. Down. It's about your cat climbing on shit. Hume had a lot of cats and they climbed on everything. I don't know if that's true. But if he did have cats, they certainly climbed on things. Okay. Now, what is the problem of induction? Well, the problem of induction is a problem that is unique, or, well, specific to empiricist epistemology, which we talked about in the last video. So, if you haven't watched that video, please go watch it. Please read the readings on empiricism, because you're not going to understand what the hell is going on in this video if you don't. If you recall from our discussion of empiricism, the whole way, their whole story about how you get beliefs was that physics goes in your face, it makes impressions on your brain in the form of simple ideas, that is color, shape, sound, stuff like that. You gradually learn to group some of those simple ideas together in sort of bundles, and these are complex ideas. All of the shapes and colors and textures and sounds that go together to make up what I call my cat, those are simple ideas, and when I encounter all those simple ideas in one place at the same time, I know that I'm encountering my cat. Okay. Now, the problem that Hume is outlining is that this way of generating beliefs relies on a mode of thinking called induction. Induction is sort of the hipper, more dangerous younger brother to deduction. Deduction, if you recall from the discussion of the rationalists and from the readings at the very beginning of class on the methods of philosophy, deduction is a mode of deriving conclusions, a way of deriving conclusions wherein the conclusion is guaranteed to be true if the premises are true and the logical structure arranging them is correct. So, if you plug in the right premises, cats are mammals, premise 1, premise 2, mammals are warm-blooded, conclusion, cats are warm-blooded. A implies B, B implies C. Conclusion, A implies C. The logical structure is correct. The premises are true. The conclusion is true. It's a deductive statement, or a deductive argument. Now, again, if you'll remember from the discussion of the rationalists, deduction was the only form of generating beliefs other than things that were analytically true by definition. Deductively generated beliefs were the only ones that they thought were justified. Okay? So, I could, if I was starting from a bunch of deductively justified premises, I could get a deductively sound conclusion, and I would know that it was true. That was their way of thinking about justification. You have justification when you know something is true, when it just has to be true. But there's no way it could possibly be false. Then you can be guaranteed. That's what justification is. It's the certainty of truth. So they love deduction. Now, I'm not going to go back into why that was a problem for their account of epistemology. Those are in 2 other videos, rationalism and empiricism. For this video, what you need to focus on is that the empiricists employed induction. Now, induction is a mode of logical reasoning that does not guarantee that the conclusion is true. And you might say, all right, well, what good is it? Right? If I don't want to guarantee the conclusion is true, I'll just ask my little brother. Right? I'm like, well, who's the president of the United States? He's like, Ninja Turtle! I'm like, sure, whatever. I mean, maybe, for all we know. But seriously, what good is induction? Well, induction is just using relevant premises to posit a conclusion that is reasonable, if you will, that seems likely to be true. Like let's say on a particular calendar date, like October 19th. Imagine if I lived somewhere where every year for the last 10 years it has rained on October 19th. And I'm trying to figure out if I should take an umbrella. Well, alright. Inductively, I can conclude that it's rained every day for the last 10 years on October 19th here. If it does rain, I'm going to want an umbrella. I should take an umbrella. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the conclusion is true, right? Maybe it's not going to rain today. I have no way of knowing that, right? If it's not going to rain, I shouldn't take an umbrella because it's annoying and it's an extra thing to keep track of, and I won't get the benefit of it, and that doesn't make all the extra hassle worth it. So the conclusion could be false. The conclusion I should take an umbrella could be false, depending on whether it will or will not rain today. I don't know whether it's going to rain today, not for certain. I have no certain knowledge of it, but inductively, I've got a pretty good case, right? Induction is what you see in criminal trials a lot, right? They're not making a deductive case. It's not certainly true, although prosecutors will want you to think that. They are merely stacking up the weight of evidence and then saying the most reasonable conclusion, the most probable conclusion, the one that we should endorse right now is this, is that this person is guilty of stealing a whole bunch of crabs from the fish market. Why he did it, we don't know. but we have a good inductive case. He was present at the scene. He was acting suspiciously. He had a large empty box with him that was marked definitely not full of stolen crabs. He fled the scene cackling, "I've got all your crabs." We're not. Those things could have other explanations, but probably not. If you come home to find your child smeared with chocolate chips and cookie crumbs, and the cookie jar is lying on the floor, empty, it's possible, in the broad sense of the word possible, that someone broke into the house, force-fed your child chocolate chip cookies, and then left. But the more likely conclusion is that your kid just got into the cookie jar. Right? Induction. By the way, if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes or like the BBC Sherlock mysteries, Sherlock is a moron. I say this primarily because in every version of Sherlock, all the way back to the original written versions, he refers to what he does as deduction. That is false. Sherlock uses induction. He does not use deduction. Conan Doyle gets those two terms precisely reversed in meaning in the original stories. He doesn't know what they mean. Sherlock does not use deduction. He uses induction. He balances the weight of probability on the various pieces of evidence and comes to conclusions. It just so happens that he is sensitive to more kinds of evidence. He can spot evidence where others would not. And he is better aware, better capable of balancing the probabilities correctly. Okay, so induction. We use induction all the time, right? And especially in the empiricist account. The empiricist account depends upon induction. Think about it. I see certain shapes and colors, and I begin to associate them with a particular person or a particular phenomenon, right? I see a little smallish shape that is black and white and has a certain four-legged shape with a tail and coming off of the end of it. And especially if it is making noise or climbing somewhere it shouldn't be, I've got a pretty good guess that that's my cat, Elias. I feel confident in that identification, especially when you balance out all the other probabilities, right? I don't own any other cats that are that size and color. The doors are all closed. How would another animal have gotten in? The probability that it isn't Elias is vanishingly small. But it's not nothing. It's not nil. That's the thing about induction. It's never certain. It's never guaranteed. When you weigh these probabilities, you never come out with a situation where the conclusion is a lock. For instance, I've woken up every day of my life so far. I've got an inductive case that I will wake up tomorrow. But I could die in my sleep. Right, that's pretty morbid, isn't it? I don't know why that just came to me. Except maybe I'm on the treadmill and I kind of feel like dying. Anyway, I could die in my sleep. In which case I'd be wrong. I've seen things out of the corner of my eye that I thought were the cat. But it turned out to be like a plastic bag or something. Or a different cat, right? Where I misidentified what color the cat was. Because we have Elias is a little black and white cat. He's a little tuxedo kitty. And Darian is all black and about the same size. So sometimes I will see something out of the corner of my eye, and I will think it's Elias, and I'm wrong, right? The physics go in my face, they make an impression on my mind. There's a bundle of simple ideas that I look at the context and I sort of group them together, and I make my conclusion, that's Elias, and I'm wrong, right? I was acting on maybe too little evidence. I was being too hasty. Or maybe I had plenty of evidence. What if someone snuck in and replaced Elias with an identical duplicate, right? I'm getting all of the same impressions on my mind. The physics are going in my face. I see a little black and white kitty. I think that's Elias. But I'm wrong. It's not Elias. It's some other cat named Sheldon. Why is his name Sheldon? Don't know. It just came to me. Anyway, what if we talked in the rationalism video? What if someone has set up a fake cat decoration for Halloween, and I see it, and I think it's a real cat, right? Physics go in my face. I get a bundle of impressions that my brain says, cat. But then as I get closer, I go, oh, no, cat decoration. Not the same thing, right? We can be fooled. The impressions on our mind are associated through induction with certain conceptual content. The conceptual content of Elias, my cat.
I have a reminder for Professor.
Shut up! Anyway, the conceptual content in my mind is associated with this little bundle of impressions, and I could be mistaken, either because someone's intentionally trying to deceive me, or because I just made an error in my reasoning, or because circumstances are just crazy, right? Crazy circumstances can lead to that. You can just be in a weird situation where no one's trying to deceive you, and you're doing your job, generally speaking, as an observer, but it just so happens that you make a wrong guess, like with identical twins, right? Lots of movies run on this, where somebody's twin shows up and everybody thinks it's the other guy, right? Nobody in that situation is behaving carelessly. They are all reacting in a normal fashion to the world around them. And no one is trying to deceive anyone. It just so happens that because of the oddball circumstances, the usual calculation of probabilities is thrown off, right? Imagine if I owned two cats, Elias and Sheldon. Why not? Imagine if I owned two cats, Elias and Sheldon, that looked identical. Now, if I got the physics in my face and I got a little bundle of impressions on my mind that were small and black and white and shaped in that particular way, knowing that I own two cats, I would not immediately leap to the judgment that is Elias. I would go, well, that's either Elias or Sheldon. Right. And I'd have to check their tags. Or if you just ask, you'd be like, are you Elias or Sheldon? You go, I'm Elias. Okay, cool. Because, Sheldon can't talk. I'm funny, damn it. And I know it. Anyway. I would go, sure. Right? I would have no way of immediately knowing, because I know the probabilities are skewed by that. Without knowing that the probabilities are skewed by someone having a twin in those fantastical movie situations, you can have everyone behaving in an epistemically responsible fashion, and you can have someone who isn't trying to deceive anyone, and yet everybody still winds up making a bad identification based on the impression, the bundle of simple ideas that the physics have created in their mind. Okay. So induction, troubling, possibly, but we can get out of it if we can show, yeah, all right, you're telling us induction fails sometimes. That's nothing new. We knew that in the last video. Empiricists have always been willing to admit it. They've always said it's not perfect. Sometimes you have a justified belief that turns out not to be true. Big deal. Big whoop. The problem of induction shows up in a very kind of subtle way. The reliance on induction as a mode of forming beliefs is based on the idea that it is normally a good way to get beliefs, normally a good way to get true beliefs. The empiricists can sell their program to us, can sell their theory of knowledge to us, if we can say, all right, so sometimes there are mistakes, but overall, induction is reliable. And Hume says, what if I told you there's no way to demonstrate that induction is reliable? Philosophy. Hume, you Scottish git, he's got him in trouble, right? I'm telling you. Anyway, here's the breakdown. So, deduction has long been known to be reliable. It can be demonstrated formally, the same way that you can demonstrate formally through proofs that mathematics is reliable, a reliable way of getting conclusions. But certain mathematical processes and formulas that these are things that lead to accurate results. I don't know if any of you remember doing proofs in your math classes in high school. Most people hate them. I love them because I'm a weirdo, but you knew that already. Anyway, induction did not have a formal proof behind it, but most people just accepted, yeah, we use induction all the time. Surely it's reliable. And that's where Hume rolls in and says, I don't think it is, man. Because check it. The question on the table, and this is the problem of induction, as Hume introduces it. The question on the table, is induction reliable? Well, how would we demonstrate if it was? We could try to demonstrate it. One way to demonstrate that something is reliable is a formal deductive proof. But induction doesn't work that way. There's no way to demonstrate that induction is reliable through formal proofs. So that's out the window. All right. What's the other way to demonstrate? Well, unfortunately, there's either demonstrating it deductively or inductive demonstration. Those are our two ways of getting beliefs, right? Deduction and induction. The rationalists like deduction, the empiricists like induction. But Hume points out, why do you think induction is reliable? And I say, well, it always has been. That's induction. I'm trying to use induction to prove that I should be allowed to use induction. I can see you're all very upset. Running around, screaming. The world as you know it has come to an end. I understand. I feel your pain. You guys don't give a shit. You guys are sitting there going, is this on the test? And I'm like, there's no test! Read this! Whatever. But think about it. This is a bombshell. We want to know if we can trust induction. And Hume points out that the way we've been justifying our use of induction relies on induction. And he says, by the way, guys, that's bad, right? That's circular reasoning, as we call it. And it's a logical error, right? And if you think about the situation, you can see why it's a logical error. Because if I say we can trust induction because it's always worked before, which is to say, because of induction, then if I'm right, no problem. But if I'm wrong in the first place, right, if I'm wrong about whether induction is good, then I've propagated a systemic error. I've created a situation where there's literally no way for me to observe my error. It's like checking on your electrical system in your house and you're using a faulty tool, a faulty meter, right? If you try to read a bad electrical system with a bad meter, who knows? You're never going to figure out what the problem is, right? At least if you have a bad electrical system, you have a good meter, you can start figuring out what's wrong. But if your meter is broken and the electrical system is broken and you're trying to figure out what's going wrong, shit, man, who knows? Why is it giving me this reading? Is it because of the shitty electrical system in my house or because of the meter being shitty and broken? Your guess is as good as mine. We're out of luck. We don't know jack in that situation. And that's kind of what Hume is saying. He's saying, look, man, if I'm right about this, and induction can't be justified, like there's just no way to justify it other than induction, which we can't do, because that's some bullshit right there. If induction can't be justified, then it can't provide justification. And therefore, we empiricists, and Hume was an empiricist, he wasn't a rationalist. We empiricists don't actually know anything, right? We might get a lot of true beliefs, and we might get some false beliefs, but there's no justification happening anywhere, because we're relying on a method that fundamentally can't be justified itself. So, this is called Humean skepticism. Now, remember, under the rationalists, we talk about Cartesian skepticism, which is the worry that you don't know anything because you can't demonstrate deductively anything beyond the existence of yourself and, analytically true statements. Humean skepticism is the worry that, yeah, we may be getting true beliefs, but our means of getting those true beliefs is not justified. And so while we can still get a bunch of true beliefs, unlike in Cartesian skepticism, where Descartes is like, for all I know, everything's an illusion by an evil demon who is trying to fool me. Hume's like, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not thinking we're in the Matrix. He says there's an outside world, and we get beliefs about it all the time, and some of them are true and some of them are false. My problem is, you've told us this fairy tale about why some of those beliefs are justified, and it just doesn't hold water. So they don't count as knowledge. We don't know, honestly, in the end, which beliefs are knowledge and which aren't. And we can't, lay down the law on that either. Okay. So, Humean skepticism and the problem of induction. The problem of induction leads to Humean skepticism. The worry that while we may in fact be getting true beliefs, they are not justified because we got them via induction, and induction itself as a means of forming beliefs has no justification. Okay. How do we respond to Humean skepticism? Well, my favorite quote, and Hume has got to be one of my favorite philosophers ever. He's just a delightful writer. I love his work. I love his philosophical thought. He's just great. I love his stupid hat. And he had a very stupid hat, but I love it. Um, the one clue about how we can approach it is Hume himself. Because he didn't just drop this and walk away from it. He had kind of an answer to it. Now, it's an answer that is either brilliant or moronic, depending on how you think about it. I used to think it was moronic, and now I think it's brilliant. We'll talk about that in a second. Hume said, what do we do about this? What do we do about this worry that we have no knowledge? He says, I, for one, am very worried that I have no knowledge until I close my books and I leave my study, and then I don't worry. Right? Hume kind of, sort of just said, you can do that? I hear philosophy students everywhere saying, right? I can do that? No, Hume can do that. You do your freaking homework. When you've dropped as much knowledge as Hume has, you've earned a few, for now, write your shit. Anyway, Hume kind of, sort of, just, weird, huh? And, moved on. Which sounds like dropping the problem and walking away from it. It does. But it kind of isn't. And I'll tell you why. Many years later, after Hume, Kurt Gödel, mathematician and logician, proved that no system of axioms is entirely self-demonstrable. And some of you are like, oh yes, of course, that's the answer. Here's what I mean. Think about when you took geometry, if you took geometry, think about the fact that at the very beginning you learned certain axioms, which is to say certain basic rules or assumptions that went into doing geometry. Like two parallel lines will never, on the same plane, will never cross. That's one of the axioms of geometry. It's like a basic rule. And in order to make all the math work, in order to do the proofs, in other words, you have to refer back to that rule. Now, what Gödel proved, and this is the incompleteness theorem, what the incompleteness theorem means is that if you have a list of axioms, sometimes you can use some of those axioms to demonstrate the others. For a long time, it was thought that all the axioms of geometry could be used to sort of demonstrate each other. So you have a perfect, complete system. Every little thing in the system is logically, deductively provable. Except it's not. Some of those axioms defy proof. And people are like, well, we just haven't figured it out yet. We haven't figured out how to prove this one from the other one. So it's got to be the case. Not only did Gödel prove that it didn't have to be that way, he proved that it, as a matter of fact, was never that way. Any axiomatic system is going to have at least one foundational axiom that you just sort of give yourself, that you just spot yourself. That you're like, we're assuming this is true. We are assuming, for the sake of geometry, that two parallel lines on the same plane will never meet. Once we have this idea in our head that this is not an irrefutable, demonstrable fact, it's just something we've assumed for the sake of doing Cartesian geometry. And yes, Descartes, Cartesian geometry, same guy. He invented coordinate Cartesian geometry. So if you've ever done X, Y coordinate math, that's also Descartes. See, there's so many reasons to hate this guy. And that's to say nothing of the fact that he abused animals. So anyway, and he was an asshole. Anyway, and French. I'm kidding. I love the French. They make good bread. Anyway, point is, in any axiomatic system, that is to say, in any system where you lay down certain ground rules and then you figure out conclusions based on those rules, like what is true, there's going to be at least one rule that you can't demonstrate, that you can't secure to a logical foundation, one rule that you can't justify. If I was editing this, there would be theme music in there. Right then. Just then. Just missing. Just wind it back. I'm kidding, there's still no theme music. I haven't edited it yet. Anyway. So there will be one rule that is non-justified, but provides justification for all of the other ones. And it does so not in the sense of being cosmically true, in like the sense that the rationalists, get so revved up over with deduction. It's providing justification in the hypothetical sense, which is to say, if we assume that two parallel lines on the same plane will never meet, then a bunch of geometry. Pow! Okay. So, in a way, what Hume provided us an insight into hundreds of years before Gödel was that sometimes we just have to make some good faith assumptions, right? Maybe justification flows out of induction, not because induction itself can be justified, but because I just have to assume it if I'm going to get anything done. I mean, imagine if you did not assume the reliability of induction. Imagine what your life is going to be like. Like, if past experience was never any guide to anything, right? If you saw a little bundle of white and black, you had to relearn what that was every time because you couldn't assume it's the same thing you saw last time, right? You would be constantly like an infant. Induction forms the foundational building block of our way of interacting with the world. We don't even think about it, and we use it all the time. You don't have to know the name of induction to intuitively, instinctively rely upon it as a mode of generating beliefs. So you constantly induct in order to navigate your world. And maybe the answer to Humean skepticism is to say, induction is just one of those things we're going to have to spot ourselves. Which, of course, is going to make the rationalists tear their hair out even more, because that's like a layer of uncertainty on top of a layer of uncertainty, right? That's like putting bacon on your... that's like putting bacon on your pulled pork sandwich, for God's sakes. It's like saying induction itself is already uncertain and sometimes gives us false beliefs that appear to be true. And now I'm just telling you that when you say, but why should I trust induction? I'm like, you just kind of have to. And you go, oh my God. But yeah, it's the only game in town, right? Going back to the other video. You know this game is rigged. Yeah, but it's the only game in town. What else are you going to do, man? Unless you've got some kind of cosmic super senses, or unless you can repair rationalism, in which case, write that in a paper, give it to me, I'll take credit and become a famous philosopher. Yeah, unless you're going to fix rationalism, you're stuck with it. Induction is what there is. You have to eat. You have to navigate. You have to go to your job. You have to get dressed. You can't wander around in a fog relearning everything every time you encounter it. Induction is the only game in town. Live with it. So that's one answer, and probably the best answer. You'll see in the readings where they talk about it. Another answer is that maybe we don't, trying to say that induction can be justified deductively, like appealing to deduction to justify induction is just mistaken. It's a category mistake. Induction is not the kind of thing, it's not the right sort of thing to justify deductively. I don't know how much that buys us. That buys us a way out of some criticisms, but it doesn't give us a positive reason for trusting induction. I like referencing Gödel's incompleteness theorem and Hume's kind of reaction to it, and just saying we're stuck with it. This is what human existence is like. Right? Of course, the third alternative is just to embrace Humean skepticism, and that sounds like it might be a hip kind of contrarian opinion, but it also doesn't really mean anything. Right? Some people are like, I just don't think we can have justification. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And they're like, no, I don't. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Right? You may not admit it, but if you ever act as though your beliefs are justified, then you think we can have justification. Right? You're lying to yourself if you think you are a Humean skeptic, because you literally can't be a Humean skeptic. That's the funny thing. Humean skepticism is an intellectual position, but there's no way to actually occupy that space in lived experience. It's easier. You can occupy the space of being a Cartesian skeptic. You can walk around and literally think that the whole world is a simulation, or an illusion, or a fantasy, or a dream. You can believe that. I don't know why you want to, but you could, and you could still interact with things. You're just believing that they're not really real. A Humean skeptic is in a much worse position. A Humean skeptic literally doesn't know. If I look at my hand, and then I look away, and look back at it, I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. Right? And you're like, it's got the same bundle of shapes and colors as your hand. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't rely on induction, so let's start at the beginning. Jeez. Yeah, Humean induction is kind of ridiculous. There's really no way to be, or Humean skepticism rather. Humean skepticism is kind of ridiculous. There's literally no way to be a Humean skeptic. It's just impossible as the situation stands. You can be a Cartesian skeptic, although you be no fun at parties, or all the fun at parties, but nowhere in between. But you can't be a Humean skeptic. It's just impossible. Okay. So that's the problem with skepticism, and maybe one answer to it. Do the readings. This is complicated. If you are confused, do the readings. This is not an easy, particularly easy part of epistemology to grasp. So, all right. Well, 43 minutes is good, right? That's a decent workout. I'm sweating. I've been sweating for a while. That counts, doesn't it? I'm going to say that counts. All right. Have a good day. Be well. And I have an inductive belief that you actually exist. Take care. Bye.